It's the Dev Friday show with Mark and Tim. 'Twas the Dev Friday before Christmas, and that's all you get for $5.
I know this is probably a bad time to ask this, Mark, but did you hear the bumper music this time?
I did.
Okay, because like I was trying to play music. You know when you do like one of those retros or something, and everybody's throwing whiteboard stuff on and like a virtual whiteboard and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I forgot to take the video off. Look at that. I don't even know what I'm doing this morning. So I was trying to play some music in the background on one of those, because you can set a timer. You're like, everybody take 5 minutes, throw some virtual post-it notes on this virtual board. And for some reason, I think Zoom was just like, oh, no, that's music. You're not music. You're a person. So we're just muting that. So I wasn't sure if some of my settings were wrong on my mixer, but apparently
I'm just grooving out to this Christmas music, Tim.
This is amazing. Yeah.
That's
great. So this is we were going to talk about a couple of things I'm curious about today. One is, did you make it any further in Advent of Code? Did we get past day 2?
How much would you like to bet that I was able to get past day 1?
Well, you did day 1, right?
I did day 1.
You did.
Well,
you did day
well,
1.
I guess past day 1 into day 2.
And did you start on day 2?
I started it, and then I didn't. I was like, I got other stuff to do.
Okay.
But hey, it's still the Christmas season. We haven't gotten to Christmas yet.
Yeah,
there's still a few more days left on the Advent calendar that I can catch up on.
I like how Mark is setting next year's Advent of Code. You like your goal for next year's Advent of Code is
and each week you can see how my goal starts to get a little bit more minimal. My goal going to was like, I'll do the 15 out of the 25
last week
days.
It was 10. Right, last week was
and then
10.
I moved it to 10. Now maybe 5. We'll see if I can get down to 5 before Christmas.
My money's on 2, folks. My money's on 2. I don't want to sound like a naysayer here. Give us an idea though, from somebody who's tackling Advent of Code in potentially the worst way possible. I mean, I don't know if there's a worst way to do it. I mean, maybe it's the best way. You're right.
I think as I mentioned last week, I think it's a good excuse to use a language that I have no reason to use for in any other way. Like
that's true. That's true. Because where else would you be using C++? Sorry, not C++. C. Just plain old C. I mean, maybe you could do this in COBOL. Is that a thing still?
Well,
power?
Well, I did see
Pascal?
some people. I did see a couple people on Reddit were trying to use COBOL. So that was also kind of.
Were they really?
Oh yeah, because I think that's one of the great things about the Advent of Code. It gives you an excuse to use a language that you have no reason to use and for any other purposes. So if you want to learn,
take the month off.
If you want to learn a language, or if you just want to play around with a language you haven't used in a while, I think it's a good excuse too. So,
but shouldn't you if you're gonna do Advent of Code with COBOL, that's your month, right? I feel like that's your month. I don't feel like you're doing much else other than I may be wrong. I may be wrong about the power of COBOL. I don't know. From
what I was reading about the some of these surveys, the end of the year surveys, you ever take a look at these?
Oh, like
the end of the year technology surveys,
state of developers, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
and the ones that say like how much people get paid. COBOL developers they get paid pretty well.
I mean, of course,
because there's only like 5 of them in the world.
I know, and every single ATM runs on it, right?
So you can make $1 million if you're a COBOL programmer very, very easily.
Maybe that's what people are doing. They're like, you know what? If I can do Advent of Code and COBOL, then I can be, I can get those kind. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That was something actually wanted to talk about. Did JetBrains release their survey? Did you take a look at it all?
Their survey. Wait,
the state of the developer ecosystem.
JetBrains
2023.
JetBrains is I think I saw it. What I saw was JetBrains. I see 2022. I think I want to say 2023.
Yeah, 2023.
I saw that they released their AI assistant to general availability.
Oh, that I've not taken a look at because I'm not using their tools as much.
It's borrowing from a couple different models, so it's not just one model. I'm pretty I'm playing with it. I haven't played too far. So what were the highlights of the state of the developer ecosystem?
Well, the one thing that I wanted to ask you about, because I was curious if you took a look at this, because it's interesting to kind of see what programming languages are being used over the past year. What is trending, what is not trending. What languages or frameworks or libraries or systems that developers are looking to adopt in the new year. And one thing that I did see that PHP did take a little bit of a fall in the likely to adopt.
Well,
If
it's
you
just
look,
because everybody's already using it, Mark.
it's probably true. Well, you can see how if you look at one of the first charts here, we don't have to go through the whole thing, but I thought it was just kind of interesting. Just look at the first chart here. Which programming or scripting or markup languages have you used in the last 12 months? I do like also the way they have this chart laid out. So it goes back from 2017 to this year, 2023, and then has a nice gradient view of all with percentages and kind of shows you some nice perspective, like percentages of how many developers either are using a language
Yeah.
or are looking to use a language. And then I like how what in 2017 PHP was 30%. And there's just
Yeah.
a slow trickle down to this year's 18%. But then
18%.
the likely
about
to
that?
adopt, that's also the interesting of likely
1%.
to adopt in the upcoming year. I'm assuming that's what that means. It's 1%.
Yeah. It's a tough showing, apparently, whoever they surveyed here.
Yeah, but compared
I'm
to,
looking
let's
at
say,
Rust.
well, all of them are kind of low, right? Respectively, all of them are kind of low. Looking at like between like
Rust
JavaScript,
being the
Python.
highest, I think, right now. 10%
Yeah,
of people say they're going to look to Rust. 9% Go, which that tracks to me
Yeah,
as to the language you might be
Mhm.
aspirationally looking at, right?
I think so. And so it is interesting. All these numbers are relatively low, but it is interesting to see that PHP is just bring up the bottom there, along with HTML and CSS. Nobody's looking to adopt HTML and CSS in the upcoming year. That's also at 1%.
1%. And who else? Oh yeah, Scala is at 1% as well.
Oh, even though the Scala was one of the, what was that? That's actually at the top. It's a share of top. If you're the chart for a share of top paid employees by primary language, Scala is at 60%. So like COBOL, if you are a Scala programmer, you are making bank.
Scala 6. Oh wow, look at that. Now do I show more? Is that how we do this? Where's the COBOL? I don't see COBOL.
No,
I think it's not even listed on COBOL. What are you talking about?
That was, I think, that was in the Stack Overflow. I don't know the Stack Overflow server that they do. I think it was back. It was another server that I saw that the COBOL developers are making a lot of money, but there's not that many of them.
I don't know why you're looking at C, because it looks like you can make 2% more if you were C++.
It's true. Well, what I could talk about, what led me into, because of spending some time with C and the first day of Advent of Code and getting through that with C, and kind of wanting to do some more days, which I'm hoping to get, let's say, at least up to 5. Like I said, that's my goal before Christmas. We'll see how it goes. But going back to C and then thinking about, we brought back some memories of also some PHP, but then thinking, why don't I take a look at Go? So that's what I was kind of doing this week.
So you've now switched over to do Advent of Code and Go.
No, not Advent of Code.
Just looking at it. Okay.
No, but just because one thing I also want to talk, which I think I alluded to previously, was one of the libraries or middleware that I found. When I'm, learning Amazon Web Services, learning about, doing serverless applications with Lambda functions. And what I was trying to look for is a stack or is a pattern to use that basically I could leverage what I know, how I've been building server-side applications my whole life, but do that on Lambda. So there is a AWS Labs project. It's on GitHub called the AWS Lambda Adapter. And it's actually, it's a really cool little small piece of middleware that you can then add to your project, and then you can basically release your project if you're building a project with Laravel and PHP, or building a project with even Rails, or if you're using Go, you have Gin, which is kind of their web framework. And then the way you set it up is basically you set up a Docker, you make a Docker container, Docker image out of your project, and then inside the Docker image, you bring in the Lambda adapter, and it basically allows you to run your web project on a Lambda function. And then the one thing I really like about it, it gives you a good kind of template that you can then also scale out if you need to, or kind of migrate to different. So let's say if you want to start a Lambda, maybe for performance or even for cost efficiencies, maybe it's not the best way to release it. But then the way you set up the Docker image, you can then easily move this to Fargate or EKS, because it's just a Docker image. Right, so it's this Docker image with this little bit of middleware that allows you to interface with the Docker image, and also with specifically with the Lambda functions. But then you can then scale the Docker image up if you need to different serverless.
There's a Lambda function executes a Docker container essentially.
Yes, that's all it is. Yep. Yeah.
And with Lambda, it keeps it warm, right? For like the next one, as long as it's.
That's where you get this. Yeah, it depends on the. It does, but depends on how how frequently it's used, also the settings that you configure for it. But it's like I said, that's also one thing when you're developing an application, try to say, okay, I want to build this server side application. I want to basically run it in a Lambda function. How well does it perform? Based on how much activity is getting, it doesn't have to spin up if it's an application not being used that often, and it does have to basically spin up that process. There might be a little bit delay there, even though the delay might be a couple seconds, but a couple seconds matters. So is it the right choice to use for all server-side applications? Probably not. But I do like the model of using this little bit of middleware that makes it easy to build out a Docker image, using basically any web frame or any web process. So if you want to use PHP or Go, which that's what I was saying, I'm playing with Go and Gin, and kind of seeing how you can easily set that up, and then to have your server-side web project and then run it on Lambda, see if it works well on that, at least as a starting point, because it's very easy just deploy a Lambda function and then connect it to, if you're using the Route 53 or using your the API gateway, and just to kind of connect it. It's pretty simple to do.
So easy to get it up there without having to worry about the deployment concept.
Yeah.
Even though arguably, running it on the Lambda function, not the most performant way to go.
So, it's interesting, but at least gives you a nice starting point. And taking a look at, like I said, coming back from spending a week with C and then saying, oh, I kind of like the brevity of the syntax. That's one thing I really got out of spending the week with, struggling through that first day of Advent of Code, and becoming refamiliarizing myself with C and B, and kind of because I really haven't touched it since college. So it's been a very, very long time. And then going back to it, I really appreciate, even though you have to write a lot of it.
You do, yeah.
You're writing everything from scratch, unless you're going to be using, unless you can, pull in some specific libraries which you want to use. But, just the standard library doesn't give you too much compared to other languages or other libraries, or especially other frameworks. So you're kind of limited. So you have to write a lot of C if you want to accomplish anything. But then I do like the brevity of the language. So when I look at my project, look at the code, look at the project, actually it's very readable. It's very clean. And I do like that approach. And that actually
what's going on because you're doing it all.
And thinking about from Go's perspective, it leverages a lot of that. So
it does, right? Like, but you have like language level libraries that make a lot of that stuff. Like you wouldn't have to write all that you did just to read a file.
Because Go is designed, and Go's designed for HTTP.
Right.
So you have, it's designed for, writing
how do you
HTTP
do
applications.
So how does Go do a web application? Does it launch its own? Does it run as like an HTTP server?
You can. So it is compiled, but it can run as, it's basically, it's running it. It's because it's not a dynamic language. It's a compiled language, but it has, it's runtime. So if you're running, and the Gin framework does this for you, basically runs a server, kind of basically runs the process for you.
And that is an HTTP server then?
Yes. So it gives you that, but basically just a compiled process.
Right. But then it's like, so you're building something that's an HTTP server. I'm guessing to run this at scale. I'm just wondering how
it's very similar to like Node. It's kind of like if you want to compile
so you'll be handling multiple requests on one process.
True. Yep.
Okay. So you'll have state, you'll be up, you'll have state. And then do you normally?
Well, it's not like that's a good question. So if it's, like I said,
if you're doing it in Lambda, you don't, because Lambda is running, like spinning up a container once per request, right?
Yes.
But like, I'm just saying, like if you're saying, I'm going to build this web API, I'm going to use Go.
That I'm not 100% sure about it. Cause like I said, I'm just starting.
You're just playing with it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just playing with it. Just kind of
because a lot of times you throw some stuff behind something like Nginx, right? Because Nginx is a web server, right? Like, so, and then that then proxies to something. I'm just curious as to like, how many requests does it handle at a time? Do you spin up multiple threads? I mean, how does that work?
Well, the way that I'm just writing it or kind of thinking about it is like going back to the PHP model, just a single request, right? Because that is kind of like, that's kind of the most efficient way to do it. Like I said, I don't want to go back to the Ruby days of just having a long running request and just having it just listing for it. And then,
Right. Is that how Ruby ran?
Yep.
So
it's very performant.
It handled all of the requests.
Yes.
That must have done that terribly. like that doesn't. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well,
And make sure you also have the backup Ruby process running too, in case the first one, first one fails.
Well, of course the first one's going to crash. I mean, anyway. Like that's why there's things like Apache and Nginx. You know what I find interesting about? I was scrolling through the developer report.
Mhm.
How frequently do you use the following features of the existing AI assistants for coding? I
Mhm.
found it interesting that because there's some high percentages here in the never column. And 62% of developers say they never use it for generating commit messages. And I was like, that's fascinating. I wonder, I know nobody's
For
using it, but
generating commit,
commit
so
messages.
because they never use it for.
That's what I just found it fascinating that 62% say they never use it for generating commit messages. If you look at the stats, you can see there's this really nice sweet spot right in the middle where it looks like they've got 4 columns, quite often, from time to time, rarely, and never. And there's some decent percentages in quite often, from time to time, and even rarely, where you're like, oh, there's a lot of developers that are at least touching this when it comes to generating generating tests, explaining code, explaining bugs, things like that, generating code comments. But then you go down and say, well, what does everybody never use it for? Only 6% of people use it for generating commit messages quite often. But that kind of intrigued me a little bit, because if you gave it a change set and said, explain what this is, it may be better at explaining it than you
Mhm.
are, because you're saying this is, a lot of times our commit messages aren't what we did. Our commit messages are what we intended to do.
That's true.
Right. So
Mhm.
that could be, now I'm kind of intrigued with that. Oh, it looks like only 9% quite often use it for refactoring code, while I think it'd probably be pretty
But
good at
isn't that
that.
also kind of built into the your tooling, right? So if you're using, and maybe JetBrains does this, I don't know, maybe because you
Oh, you
use.
mean the refactor tools?
So is there a way? So let's say if you're running your source control management through your IDE, and then if
Hmm.
your IDE, because the IDE can track your changes through for Git, so you
Oh
can see
yeah. Well, I
what's
mean,
changed, and then you can apply your commits and apply your messages through the IDE. Now,
yeah.
does the like JetBrains have it some type of generating
I think
text that happens like based on the changes you made?
I think I mean, it's definitely possible. I haven't played with their AI enough to know if they do it that way, but it's possible in that. I mean, if you're using Git, I mean, there's simple command lines that can say dump me the diff, right?
But
And then if you're,
how to boil that diff down into one or
I
two
mean,
sentences?
that's what large language models are for, right?
Well, I know, but I think it does make sense. But I don't
Yeah.
think it exists now. Like just
No, 6% of people are using it for that though. I've seen tooling for generating commit messages.
oh, that's I'm curious about where's the tooling built in. So what
I think it'd
application
be
do you need
built
to use?
in your IDE. I don't know if Copilot can do it. My gut says JetBrains AI Assistant can do it, but I know I have seen
You know what you could, yeah, because they're
command
building
line
in
tools that do that.
the Copilot chat feature, which I haven't used too much of
That
in Visual Studio Code. So it has like a little
just
chat
rolled out,
box,
right?
the
Yeah.
chat box that's next. So which honestly, all these IDs are going to be building that type of feature into
Oh
it. That's
yeah.
going to it's going to be analyzing your code along the way, and then you can ask it a question, try to explain a a method or class to you, and then it'll give you a description about that. And so yeah, it makes sense. You can say, okay, based on my changes that I made in the recent since my last commit, give me a summary of those changes for commit message.
For a
Yeah,
commit message, yeah.
and just
Yeah.
automatically do it. That makes sense.
And then we'll see if it can also handle doing the following the Gitmoji
Get
conventions,
emoji. Yeah.
where you have some emojis that indicate what you were trying to accomplish. But no, I think that refactoring code, I think it'll get higher because
Have you seen anybody do any Gitmoji commit messages where it's just like one or two emojis and that's it?
no, I don't even do that. I don't even do that. I mean, it's to me, the utility of the Gitmoji is at the front of your commit message. It at least has the idea of what you're trying to do. Is this a new feature? Is this a bug fix? Is this a hot fix? Obviously, I do a lot of fixes, because those are the two examples that come right after a new feature.
Yeah, you gotta have like a little like worker hat emoji and then a little fire emoji after that, and then people
Yeah.
read it like, what is that? Okay, so does this mean that this fix is fire in a sense? It's great, or is this like
I'm putting out the fires. That's what that means. It's like, I'm putting out the fires. I probably caused a little bit beforehand. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think that refactoring code thing will get higher, because I feel like people are going to, especially with the chat, right?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
the JetBrains AI Assist has chat in it. Copilot's had it for a while in VS Studio and I said VS Code. It's just, I think, now kind of sort of arrived at in JetBrains IDEs. But you're going to grab a bunch of code. You're going to say like, this is hard to, this code is hard to test, or this code is not performant. This code, and then you're going to ask it what you might suggest to doing. So I think using that in refactoring code, I think we'll see more of a use of that than we're seeing right now, which according to that is only 9% of the time. The most often used, according to their survey, which I don't exactly understand or know what the sample size is here, but 26% of people say quite often they ask general questions about software development in natural languages. So I'm guessing that's just the, hey, can you remind me of what this concept is, or like, oh, give me some pseudocode for a bubble sort algorithm, just to remind me of how that works.
Yeah, for very general search, I think it does really
Mhm.
really a good job at it. But like I talked to you about last week, I definitely went down a little bit of the Copilot rat hole again with when I was trying to work through some issues with C and with the advent of code, where I was like, okay, I was dealing with like one issue with my code of like saying, okay, I'm looking at the sample of, let's say, loading some files and then processing the lines of files and getting them to memory and dealing with the memory allocation of that. And then I was doing, okay, I really want to understand this. And then I feel like, okay, it's not really working out. So I copy paste the code into GitHub, or actually in ChatGPT or Bard to actually explain to me. And it would start to explain to me. And I think the explaining is fine. And I think it does a real good job about that. But if I start to say, okay, how can you modify this to do this or do that? Or if I want to change it, then the code that it gives me, it's kind of, I don't know. It starts to get a little bit crazy there. Once I start asking to generate code based on existing code
that it generated.
Yeah. No, that I gave it
generated.
That I gave it to. It's like, you have to kind of know what you're doing in a sense. And what I was starting to do, I was starting to fight with it, which always happens. I always start fighting with ChatGPT. Like the solutions it's giving me, it's caused me more problems than I want to deal with. And I'm trying to simplify things. It's giving me more
complex solutions, because
the complexity is just
because it has like a simplistic way of handling. I've noticed that too, even in the code that it generates, right? So I'll have it generate some code and be like, this is what it should do. And I'll write the tests first. And then I will tell it that, oh, this is the error we're getting, or this is the test case that doesn't work for it. And then it'll give me a different version. I was like, oh, I didn't think about a comma being there. And then it spits out more code. And it's just like, it kind of grows in a at times, a very naive approach to programming, where it just is like, let's just add more to it. So a little less elegance than you would want, right? Instead of taking a step back and say, oh, this problem is more complex than I originally thought, so maybe this solution is not the right solution. Maybe there's another way I should think about it. Sometimes it just keeps on just adding either more clauses, more conditionals, and it's essentially brute forcing the problem at times. It might be the way to say it. But yeah.
So I'm curious. So since I'm think about education. We always like to talk about education because that's where I'm coming from. And I do think about this at the end of the semester of like, how are AI tools going to affect education or affect people as they learn, how to do jobs, how to do work.
I didn't tell you this story, did I? About my daughter in math?
I think you've alluded to a couple of
that we're just taking pictures of the problems and asking ChatGPT. Okay, I didn't know if we talked and I mean, from that, it's talk about how it impacts education. That has been super helpful to us.
And I'm not sure how much experience you have with like newer developers, let's say coming into your company or working with like how, because also I don't think back because the AI has only been a couple of years now. So I'm not sure if we're really seeing the effects of, let's say, somebody's gone through the college system using these tools.
Oh, okay. So you're like, will this make our junior developers even more junior and dependent on AI tools?
Yes.
Because they can craft the prompt to get the code, but they don't necessarily know the code.
Because what I also found myself, the way that I use it now, because I was using it a lot with like Visual Studio Code or even with the JetBrains project, and even I had it integrated with my Vim. My NeoVim with some of the plugins that they have. I also had it integrated in there. But what I did, I pulled back from it where I kind of do, if I'm working in my NeoVim setup, I just basically just have a language server running. Just give me a little bit of autocomplete and a little bit of IntelliSense, a little syntax checking along the way, because that's what I really need on the fly. And then if I really need to work with AI, then I'll go into Visual Studio, which I have Copilot configured, and then I'll do it. But I'm primarily just not using it unless I need it. But I am curious about developers who are learning how to develop just purely using it out of the box and becoming really, really dependent on it.
That's interesting, because then you're it's like the idea of the Stack Overflow driven development, right?
Yeah,
but not Stack Overflow anymore.
Because even when you
trained.
would do the Stack Overflow development, you would still have to, let's say you find this block of code that somebody said would, solve this problem, or would be a good solution to the, what you're trying to do, or a good function to try to implement what you're trying to do in your application. You had to actually, and then you had to incorporate it part of your project, and you had to make sure that it worked. Right. So there's a lot of rough edges that you had to smooth out in order to, to integrate something that you found off of Stack Overflow. Now it's like, I'm curious, especially so much code's being copied and pasted back and forth between these AI tools and your editors, or even just autocomplete in the editors. Then, how much are you really grokking and learning about, proper ways to program, or just the tools that you're using, the libraries and the languages you're using, is that going to the side where the need to become very proficient at a specific library, framework, or language, is it less needed now because we have these assistants who can help us out when we need it?
I don't know. That'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see, right? Because you already had kind of that stigma of the devs that would come from the coding camps, like the boot camps. And whether or not they just knew how to write it one way from the boot camp, and were lacking maybe a bit of I don't know, either depth of knowledge, and now if you switch that and say, well, how heavy are they really? Well, how the students that you see, the students that are doing programming that you see, how much are they leveraging these things?
I was surprised that this semester I was expecting to see more of it. Maybe a little bit, maybe like 10% of the students. Maybe I could see some examples that they probably pulled from the places, maybe some, ChatGPT or something like that. But honestly, like the way I design also my projects, where they have to be pretty creative in them. Like they have to come up with, their own designs, their own implementations, their own redesigns of websites that they're working on. So I try to fashion the exercise or the assignment, so they had to be very creative, and they can't just copy and paste from a solution. But I was actually expecting to see more of the tools being used. I know I'm hearing from other faculty who don't teach technical courses; they're seeing all over the place.
Right.
They're really dealing with
that.
it. Yeah. Where students are just copy and pasting without changing it at all, like papers or essays and stuff like that. It's crazy. But I was just thinking about when developers hit a wall, and then we've all experienced when you hit, when you get to a problem and you have to push through the wall, right? And sometimes you do have to just brute force it, just to kind of get yourself through the problem, and it's just kind of going through that process of learning something that's hard and struggling with it, and that's how you learn. I think that that's the best way to learn, is if you struggle with something and really kind of work through a problem, you'll definitely remember the pain. And you remember kind of what you learned from it, and then you'll be able to take that into the future. But what if developers don't have to experience so much pain when it comes, because they have these AI tools to kind of just automatically complete what they're working on for them? And if you don't have that process of really kind of working through an issue to kind of learn something, so it becomes easier for the implementation side of it, then I don't know. It is kind of interesting where I do get concerned about it. Like, say if junior developers hit those technical walls, and are they going to be able to push through themselves without the AI tools? Maybe I guess what I'm saying.
Right. Or it'll be interesting to see what that world looks like, right? Where it's to me, there's an aspect, it's not the same, but where as tooling improves, it's more like the IntelliSense in an IDE. It's more like higher level languages, like you're seeing, right? Coding in C isn't as easy as other languages that are higher level languages, like Go, right? Even though Go has that C-like concept, It's got the libraries that you need just to do that. So you don't have to know how to allocate memory to read a file. It's just like, no, we've got code that does that. So to me, it just seems in some ways like it's just a little bit of a higher level. Curious though that, like you said, you're seeing less of it than you thought, while other professors in non-technical classes are seeing it being used more, probably
Well,
because of the
like
difficulty to prompt for
interesting. I
coding.
haven't talked to too many other, at least this semester. Usually I talk to them in the beginning of the semester. I don't see them too much at the end of the semester because it is a totally separate department. Like the computer science instructors who are teaching like the pure programming courses, which a lot of the exercise they do use are coming from textbooks that have been around for a long time. And you can basically copy and paste those questions into the Google in the past and get results. And I assume you could do that into these AI tools and get the code back automatically. I'm not sure if they're seeing, because a lot of their project, their assignments, because I've seen this, the results because the students show me, they're very, very vanilla.
Yeah.
So when you want to do like a calculator JavaScript application, you can find so many examples of them online. And also that would be a great thing.
Is it AI
that ChatGPT could also tell you how to do?
I mean, yeah, because all that's doing is aggregating all the existing results that are already out there. It's not, yeah.
So I don't know.
It'll be interesting to see as this gets more and more adopted. So that's and this is section I'm looking at. I got right up here is the how would I use AI in the JetBrains? Like, how likely is it that you would delegate the following activities? 56% said that they would delegate writing code comments or code documentation. That's interesting to me because we already struggle with code documentation drifting. And now we're saying I'd trust automation to write it for me. I'm a little iffy about that one. 56%, same percentage say writing tests. I've seen it do some interesting things with tests. That was like, yep, this is essentially you wrote what I knew in my mind I needed to write, because it's just another test case. You know how to set up, when you looked at the system under test, so you know how to set it up. I had a comment or two that described what we were testing, and you figured out how to set it all up. Good for you. So that was, I found that searching for code fragments inside the code base, that I think is really interesting. 55%. I feel like if you had an LLM ingest your entire code base and then you could chat with it.
Yeah, that's the future. Yeah.
That like just ask it questions about this large code base, because if you're working on an application that's been around for a while, and I do every day, that's the core application's been around for a very long time. There's a lot of code.
Yeah.
So just the other day, a dev hit me up and he's like, "Hey, do you have an example of doing this thing?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It feels like we've done that. I don't know where. I can't point you," because his goal is just to, if we do it someplace else, I want to use the same pattern. I want to copy that so it's similar. But neither one of us could find a place where we did exactly what he was needing to do. So it's like, that maybe not. But if we could just ask, an LLM that had ingested all our code, hey, not have to do searches through like by keyword, or because I don't know, but the concept. Tell me where we do this concept, and it could provide some examples. That'd be super, super useful. So yeah, I think we're gonna find more and more uses there. Interesting though, 62% say that they never use it for generating commit messages, yet 50% said they would delegate writing commit messages. So that just seems to be a tooling issue.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
because there are some tools out there that do it.
Once it's very easy, it's built in the tool. Yeah, I think everybody's going to be using that, because that totally makes sense.
Just give me the blurb, and then I'll change it if I need to. But yeah, right. I forgot that we also changed that interface in this PR, and you're like, you'll get things that you wouldn't remember to put in there. So it'll be interesting. I think I'm hopeful that more and more people will stop seeing this as the overblown and hype type thing it is, because there's the hype. There's the, I wrote this application using AI. Really? You wrote a sample application that there were plenty of existing code examples all over the place, and all AI did was pretty much borrow those and spit out the code for you. And then the other ones that are like, I would never, ever trust code written by AI. It's like, okay, somewhere in the middle, there's like this, hey, this is a useful tool that is not nearly as I don't want it because it is innovative, it is interesting, it is useful, it's all of those things, but it's not to the level of people that are like, oh no, now developers aren't going to be used because product people are going to be able to describe what they want and the code is going to come out the other end. It's like, no, it's not going to be that way. But somewhere in the middle, it's like, yes, we could take a lot of the tediousness and then allow developers to continue to do what we're really the core of what we're supposed to do, or not supposed to do, but the core of what we do is we say, here's a problem, figure out how to solve it. When you figure out how to solve it, I mean, that to me is most of the fun. Once you're like, oh yeah, we'd use this and this and this, and now I have to write all that. I have to write it out very tediously so a computer understands what I'm telling it. Boy, it'd be cool to describe that and at least see some of that code just appear, and I can look at it and fix it and say, no, we got to adjust this. But stop writing all the stuff that I just it's just like it's the tedium of programming. Let's get rid of that and get back to the problem solving. And I think that's where we'll find in another couple of years. I think that's where we'll find it normalized. But
the big question is, how much will PHP be used in the next couple of years?
All right, Mark.
According to this survey, not too many.
Not too many. Okay, yeah, we'll see it. That's just because of people like you that have stigmatized developers. They're afraid to say yes. That's what it is. They're afraid to say yes. You're a PHP developer? Anyway, yes, we're PHP developers, and it's a pretty amazing language. Anyway.
So Tim, I thought, this is one of our pre-Christmas shows. I thought it's always fun to kind of talk to you about.
The title is Wish List. Is that the road we're going down?
Yes, and I think we should. I think we should talk because there's a few shopping days left in the holiday season.
Yeah.
So I was curious, have you been thinking about anything maybe that, you're not going to get yourself, or maybe you might want to get somebody else, or maybe just you think about, or some cool kind of tech.
Is this your weird way of trying to figure out what I would get you for Christmas? Is that what this is?
Well, I could tell you right now
what I would get
in this wish list. But yes, what is your tech wish list? What are the top, let's say, 3 to 5 things that like come to mind that or that you'd recommend?
That's the thing. What I would recommend, because like for a tech wish list, I don't really have one, because it's like if it's something interesting, if it's something that's going to be useful, if it's something that I think could be nice and would be helpful, you get it, right? Like that's if you can. So it's not like there's not many times where I'm like, oh, I put this on my wish list, hope somebody picks this thing up. But if you're saying, what gift should I get for my friend, my spouse, my coworker, that'd be weird. But anyway, somebody who's a tech. So what are they? I don't know. I mean, it really depends on the person, right? But for me, those that know me know I dabble with making things in the physical world, right? So I mean, you can see I've got a Bamboo X1 Carbon, just got that a little bit ago, behind me. I would say like their A1 Mini, Bamboo's A1 Mini. I've not played with it, but it is their kind of entry level, couple $100, printer, because what at least what Bamboo's done with the X1, with the P1, as far as I understand it, they did it with the A1 Mini too, is they take a lot of the fiddling you have to do. And I mean, some people like fiddling with their 3D printer and building, and that's part of the process, right? And like getting it to print right. I can appreciate that. I've done that before, but what I like is I like being able to design things, not just go and find files online, but like actually design things. Like we're doing a Christmas program at church, and I'm hanging 2 Josh Miller. We haven't mentioned his name for a while, have we?
You work with Josh Miller on something?
No, I did not work with Josh Miller on anything. But I think he'd appreciate this, right? Because I wanted to do a short throw projector, but short throw projectors are ridiculously expensive, right? Like to have like a projector that can throw just a couple feet and make it a big image.
Okay, yeah. Well, I know that the lumens are crazy expensive. Well, I was thinking the ones we deal with are more for like setting up pretty far out. If you're projecting like a building.
But if you're like saying I want to do a rear screen projection and I don't want my screen to be too far out.
Oh, okay.
Right, so I need a short throw, and those short throws like high low. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm not doing this. So I went to Walmart because that's where I go. And they had 2 Walmart brand. I think I'm pretty sure it's Walmart brand. It's whatever On is. I don't see it anywhere else. I'm pretty sure
that's their tech brand.
Tech stuff, right? Yeah. So I got 2 on projectors. And instead of shooting them, normally I turn them on their side. So they're shooting it in what would that be? A vertical orientation?
Be a portrait, right?
I get portrait. Yeah. And I've got two video outs on my laptop, and the Intel driver said I can just go in there and be like, hey, treat them as one. And they're next to each other. So my computer thinks it's one screen, 2 projections. So it's technically like projection mapping. And I knew Josh used to do projection mapping all over the place for his art installations. In fact, didn't he just do one in Chicago?
He still does,
yeah.
Yeah.
So I got 2 projectors, and last year it was a little iffy trying to get them so they were lined up right. So this week I'm like, all right, we're gonna do it again this year. Just throw quick into Fusion a little thing where I can kind of hook it on the back of a 1x4, so I can have a 1x4 that is rigid and have those 2 know that they're in line with each other and help me keep them from, kind of drifting and having to adjust one, adjust the other, adjust one, adjust the other. And it's like I just threw it in Fusion, modeled it out, threw a bunch of parts in the 3D printer, exported one of the profiles and put it on the laser and cut that out of 3mm plywood. And in the end, boom, I have this thing that the projector screws to, stick it on. So that's a long way of saying, when I look at 3D printers, I'm not interested in fiddling with the printer to get it to work. I just want it to spit out something that I designed, because it's a whole lot easier to do it that, like, to fabricate that downstairs with saws and what tools I have. It's like, no, I'm doing some increment. No. Where did the word? I had a word and it went out of my mind.
You're making your own Lego pieces that you can put together.
Yeah, they're like some
components. You're making your own components.
Yeah, and they all fit together, and it would be tough to just do that with hand tools or the tools that I have available. So if you have somebody who has that kind of, that they like that type of stuff, and you're looking for something in a couple $100 range, I would say look at the Bamboo A1 Mini. They just released the A1, which is
now what is the size? What's kind of the max size you'd be expecting to output from that? Like
on the A1 Mini, I'd have to look what that build plate is. It's not much comparatively speaking.
Could you make something bigger than a 6x6 box?
6x6 inches?
Yeah, I'm thinking about like less than a foot.
Let me look at what the build plate is on there. I mean, you're using inches, and like nobody uses inches.
I know. I'm American, right?
I know. Right? Speaking of, did you see the Nate Bargatze bit on the on the metric system?
No.
If not, you should look it up. It was hilarious. He was on Saturday Night Live, and he pretends he's George Washington, and his dream is to never adopt the metric system, and it's hilarious. He's like
funny.
He's like, we will have 2,000 pounds will be a ton, and they're like, well, 1,000 pounds, there will not be a word for it. So look that up if you want to laugh at our ridiculous measurement system. Build volume is 180 by 180 by 180 millimeters.
Oh, okay.
So 7 inches. So yes, you could do a 6x6x6.
Okay, makes sense. Okay.
So yeah, if you're looking for something for somebody who likes making stuff, that there's a bunch of diode lasers, which there's some limitations to diode lasers, but if it's somebody who likes kind of like that cutting thing, like a Cricut concept, there's some pretty affordable options there. Let's see what else would be on the list. I don't know what's on your list.
Well, I could say one.
Yeah.
So one thing I've always liked to have since the Apple Watch came out, the first version, way back when. How many years ago was that? That was a good number of years when the first Apple Watch version came out.
It's been a while.
No, it's just a smartwatch. And what I have a habit of doing, and I did this with the first series of the Apple Watch. I did it with the Fitbit. I have a habit of running these dead. Where I buy these primarily for health purposes, right? So the one thing I love about smartwatches is it can track like heart rate or sleep patterns or just simple biometrics. Having that, built into an app, so I can kind of get some status updates in regards to like health. And I don't really like them for like getting like text messages or even the apps. When I had the Apple Watch, I always just turn those things off. It was cool at first, but then I was like, yeah.
Then you got it. It sounds like you went from Apple Watch to Fitbit, because Fitbit is just very much.
Well, the reason why I left the Apple Watch is because the screen popped off, which was, like I said, I have a habit of running these things so hard. Now it's probably user error where I take them to the gym, I go in the sauna, I go in the whirlpool, even though they say that they're waterproof, they're really not.
I don't feel like they are. No.
And it's interesting.
No.
What happened with my Apple Watch? The glue actually came off of the screen, so the screen popped off, and you could see like the glue on,
It just came apart.
Yeah, it came apart. And I was like, well, I could kind of fix this, and they still kind of worked.
A little bit of hot glue. You'd be fine.
Yeah, the screen was still a little faded, but it still kind of worked. I was like, okay, I'm not doing this. So I put it aside. I didn't have a watch. Actually, I went back to probably more traditional watch for a while. And then I was like, okay, a couple of years ago, I wanted to like get back in shape and started to go doing some running, and also want to make sure when I run, I don't want to kill myself by having a heart attack, and want to have some way to kind of check myself. So the Fitbit was great for that.
Yeah.
But once again, the Fitbit lasted a long time, but the screen started to kind of flicker and started to go out. Now the screen didn't pop off, but it just didn't turn on. So the device actually still charges, it has power, but the screen won't come on. And went through the steps trying to reboot it, trying to reset it.
Sync with you in your phone, but you can't see what's going on.
It won't do the syncing. So it's weird.
Okay.
It does accept power. So if I look behind it, it does look like it's charging. It'll still vibrate. It still looks like it has power in it, and it'll still charge, but nothing else happens with it. So it's something, whatever. I don't know. Like, once again, I think it's user error. I probably just ran it too hard, maybe too many times in the sauna, and it kind of just gave up. So but I do like the idea of having a smartwatch. I know you thought about getting the Google watch.
I tried to, but I missed the date. But yeah, I think I've ordered one.
So I was tempted by those, but then I don't want to go down this pattern of like wearing one of these smartwatches. It's just going to fall apart on me because I run it pretty hard. Right?
Yeah, apparently.
So one thing I saw that I'm kind of curious about is the Garmin smartwatches.
I've heard good things about.
So if I want to watch, I could go to war with. I could
is that what the Garmin watch says they are?
I could just be very brutal with it. It sounds like the Garmin watches probably is the best way to go, and they definitely vary in price. They go from, let's say, $300 up to $1,000, so they could definitely be kind of crazy the prices. But I'm just looking like kind of the entry to mid range one around like $300 to $400 one, like the Garmin Fenix 6. That's what I'm looking at. It looks like it has the feature set is minimal, which is what I want to do. I just really want some basic sensors. But also has some, I don't know if it has a GPS built into it, which is a nice thing. Oh, it does have the GPS built into it. So that is nice. So if you do want to do some like GPS or like altitude tracking, if you were curious about that, that'd be kind of nice to have in it. But it looks like the way they're built, they're very well built, and it looks like it wouldn't fall apart on me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm guessing, is Garmin all Wear OS or whatever Google's OS is now?
That I don't know. I don't know the tech behind it, their operating system, or what they do. I like the minimalism looks like from the UI of the watch, which is, like I said, I don't need the apps. I just want to use the functionality that's built into the OS of the watch itself.
So you'd actually probably like one of those. I don't know. I'm not seeing it here, but I've seen now. I don't know if Garmin makes it, but I've seen some smartwatches that they call it like mix mode or something. Like they still have an actual analog watch face, right? Like so your hours and your minutes hand is a real hand, but then there's like OLED or an e-ink screen behind.
Yeah.
For the stats is like, because that's what you're interested in. You're more interested in what's my heart rate, what are the biometrics, not I need to check my email.
Yeah, don't you know that?
And for me, I'm kind of mixed on that checking my email thing, because like I feel like sometimes it's nice just to see, was that important? Let me just look at my watch and know that I don't have to open my phone. But I kind of get what I'm feeling, and maybe I'm wrong here. Is like you just like to be like, no, I'm done. I don't want to be interrupted.
It's a gateway to eventually you do need to open up your phone anymore, and I do actively try to not actually use my phone. Like, I've been reading more on the Kindle now, because I purposely do not want to use my phone or use my Android tablet. I want to kind of get away from screens much, but I still want to read. So I'll just use like a Kindle.
I feel like Mark's that guy that one day you're like,
because I like the fact I don't have to have notifications. I don't have to have people prodding me or notifying me or emails coming in or feel like I gotta check something. I like being separated from the screens. It's nice.
You're gonna walk into the cabin. You're gonna stick your phone and your laptop in your like Faraday cage lockbox thing.
I have thought about making those.
Now we're done. We're disconnected, and that's fine. I got to go to work. All right, pull it out. I'll work, and then no, I'm done. You can't find me. I'm out here in the middle of nowhere. So
So
All right.
the Garmin watches, that's on top of my list. The other thing we always talk about each year, I never get, and at some point I have to get it. I did seriously
talk
look at
about
getting
this-
one of these myself.
We talk
Is
about this every year.
is the YubiKey.
Oh, the YubiKey is a great. I forgot to
Now
mention
you
that.
give
The
these out as
YubiKey
gifts.
Is
The one downside about the YubiKey, which is gives you the it's a security fob or security
it's a key
USB
fob, yeah.
that you can basically have like a fingerprint ID or something or integrated with the app. And the one downside, the reason I pulled the trigger on it is that it always seem to be a little bit big for me. So if I primarily use laptops, I don't want to have like
They've got some really small ones.
Yes,
though.
that's what I wanted to ask you about. So they have the YubiKey Nano, which looks really, really cool. It's a small and there's minimal USB card that I could describe. And basically
the
it has
Nano,
like
okay.
one kind of like one gold edge that comes out of it, but basically kind of fits almost flat to inside of your computer, but gives you a little bit, at least a handle you could at least pull out from the end of it. But I'm wondering, does this work for the same fingerprint tech, or does it need to have like an app?
None of the YubiKeys are fingerprint tech that I know of.
I thought the YubiKey, the NFC, I thought you could tap on the little Y, the little circle with the Y symbol.
You can tap on that, but it's not
none of them do.
biometric.
Oh, so it just has a way so you could just acknowledge the fact you're there, you're next to it.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through their products. Yeah, all that Y is just for you to have user interaction. To say yes.
So there was never okay. So maybe
I
thought there was some type of fingerprint.
There are other
biometric
keys that do biometric stuff.
That could just you could store your fingerprint into there and then be able to track that.
The goal of the YubiKey and multi-factor authentication is something that a password, right, and something that you have, which is this physical thing. And it replaces like your authenticator app on your phone potentially, where you'd say, oh, I keep my phone with me, so I put my password. Now it's like, well, you better have this code too that's generated by what? By the phone that you carry with you. So something that you have. Well, the YubiKey just becomes the phone that you carry with you.
So you just tap it.
Yeah,
so it's like an external hard device. You just tap it when you need to get
right, because usually a browser or something will prompt you for the key.
Yeah,
that it wants, and then you hit the YubiKey, and it'll either generate the one-time password. The one thing YubiKey can't do is it can't do the time-based one-time passwords because I don't think any of the keys have a real-time clock on them. What it can do is if you have the YubiKey Authenticator running on your phone, or I don't know if they have desktop versions of it, once you stick the key in, that will unlock the Authenticator app that then can do the time-based one-time passwords. But it outside of time-based one-time passwords, it can do a bunch of other type of like challenge response algorithms. And they all store on the key, and in fact, I think you could use the key to unlock your SSH keys, unlock your computer. You can make it so you can't boot up your computer without a YubiKey in it. So again, and then the goal there is not to prove that it's you as much as to prove it's the thing that you have.
Yeah. So I am curious. The Nano actually looks really nice. I have two Nano.
Nice and small.
Yeah, so I'm curious about getting that.
There's two of them too, right? I'm looking here. Which would you go with? I'm actually curious because it looks like they have the really tiny one that has like the gold on the outside.
That's what I was looking at because I was going to ask you.
The one that's the USB-C.
So I would probably go with because I still have my Windows Surface 5 laptop. I just have a USB-C port and then a USB 3 port. So but I don't really use a USB 3 that much. I use a USB-C all the time.
Yeah,
for stuff. So the Nano with the USB, just that looks like it's super minimal. It goes in there.
Yeah,
you could still tap it and still has enough room to pull it out, so it doesn't look like it's too inconvenient to pull out. So
now I was wrong. It's not as small, but they do have the YubiKey C Bio Phyto Edition, and that will apparently do biometrics.
For some reason, I always thought that the YubiKey, even the larger ones with the circle on it,
gold ones were just that's just
a
presence. Button. Just press the button. Yeah. So you're saying I have it, I've plugged it in, and now I've pressed this button. And
which is the nice thing about those, they fits nice on a keychain. I could totally see the sense of it, especially if you go between workstations on your job, just plug it in. I think that totally makes sense.
Yeah. It just authenticates it's me because it's like a badge is really what it is, but it can be used with many different of the systems. But yeah, I'm seeing a USB-C $95, USB-A $90 for the Bio version, and I'm looking to see to confirm that it is that it is actually fingerprint, but I don't know what else it would be. Biometric. It just says that. I'm confused here. This is biometric. So how could it not be? I don't know.
So still have a few minutes left here. My final.
Your final.
Which was something I did. The first two
prepared.
The first two items on my list here, I have not bought for myself. They're on my wish list. Eventually, I may buy them, but I don't know.
Curious, does your wife listen to this podcast?
No, she doesn't.
It wasn't even a hesitation.
But the one that I did buy myself the past, I think about a couple months here, as I did upgrade my router. I bought a new router. I bought an Asus router, a gaming router, the Asus AX5700. And I had to say, I upgraded from a Netgear router. It was like one of their Nighthawk, their Netgear Nighthawk.
I remember that.
I bought from Costco. Yeah. The performance was okay. The software was horrible, and it was so slow. And if I wanted to adjust some of the settings, fix the issue, or there weren't any settings for me to adjust, they want you to use an app to do all the settings, but then the app doesn't do anything either. So I got so tired of dealing with the Netgear kind of app and their interface for managing the router. And I did start to have some just weird performance issues. I wasn't able to figure out what was causing what. And usually it resolves itself. You do a reset of the router, clear it out, it does fix it. But it's like I'm just tired of doing that. So okay, I'm just gonna pay a little money. I'm just gonna upgrade my router, go back. So one of the type of routers I've always had really great experience with is Asus routers. And I was like, so let me just go back to it and let me go back and buy another one that's really tend to be like a gaming router. And the performance has been great.
Is it nice? Yeah.
Yes. So both for my wire, I use for both my wire to going for my big switch that I have for all my my Cat 6 connections. It goes into that, but also for the Wi-Fi has been really like the distance on it throughout the house, and also the speed has been really, really good. So I've been super impressed with it.
A couple of years ago now, I was I just bit the bullet and bought a bunch of Unify stuff.
So, and create a mesh network.
Well, no, not a mesh. I have it wired a couple different access points throughout the house, plus a Unify router, Unify. What do I have? A unified router, a Unify switch, and then 3 different access points throughout the house for wireless.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, it took a little bit to kind of get it configured the way that it worked consistently, but now it works pretty well. Sometimes I fight like those like the smart light bulbs and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
They try to join it. Sometimes they have a hard time joining the network, and I created like a simpler network.
Yeah,
with it. But I've been really happy with that, like pro level networking equipment. It's
just having good interfaces and giving you a lot of options, which I think what Netgear is trying to do is trying to hide all the options. Even though the one router I did buy was a small business router. So it was designed for small businesses.
Still, they're going to hide all the options.
But it was, and it's just the interface was so clunky and so slow. And the Asus router, their software interface is still minimal from a design perspective, but then all the options it gives you, it's great. So highly recommend the Asus routers.
There you go. So if you're looking, if you're trying to figure out what to buy for that tech person in your life, and the thing that is most remarkable about them is they keep on going offline, buy them an Asus router.
I gotta admit, if
Mark sent you,
if somebody ever gave me an Asus router as a Christmas present, I'd actually be pretty impressed. I'd be like, "Whoa!"
You'd be like, "It's a router!" Like, I can imagine opening that up. It's kind of you're like,
even if I had an existing router,
Asus router,
I'd be so appreciative, so impressed. Like, well, I could use this. Maybe I could create a mesh network out of my house. I could add this as a second wireless router. It'd be amazing.
No, we should have recommended a video card. Can you imagine that? Get them a GeForce. I don't even know what's.
And even if I have a good video card, I'll be so appreciative. I'll build a whole PC just for the new video card. I would love it.
I got a video card for Christmas. Yeah, there's some ideas for you. So a router, a video card. I don't know what else.
Just go as if you're thinking about the tech person in your life, just go as geeky, as technical as possible.
Yeah,
that's what I say.
I guess. Yeah.
If it looks like something you could never understand yourself, it's probably a good thing.
Just buy it. They'll like it. They'll figure it out. And with that, I think we've only got. This is the second to last Dev Friday before Christmas, isn't it? We've only got one more. Well, Mark, we'll see how far you get next week on Advent of Code. And
well, all the grading's done, Tim. So maybe I can get back to it. We'll see.
there you go. Well, until next Friday, go out and buy a router for someone.
It's true.
Oh boy. All right. Well, I'm gonna hit the stop button on the end.